From the 809 Restaurant and Lounge in the heart of Inwood, New York City, welcome to Inwood Artworks On Air. It's where we meet the musicians, filmmakers, writers, theater makers, and artists of all stripes who make their home in what we affectionately call Upstate Manhattan. I'm Aaron Sims.
And I'm Jonathan Bell.
And this is Live and Local. It's our podcast dedicated to showcasing the musicians of Upper Manhattan. We talk with them about what they do, and best of all, listen to them perform live in one of our favorite local venues. Who's joining us today, Jonathan?
Aaron, today we welcome Inwood resident and the director of both Taikoza and East Winds Ensemble, Marco Lienhard. Marco lived and performed in Japan for 18 years as a member of the legendary taiko group Ondekoza under director Takeyasuden, who initiated the renaissance of taiko. In Ondekoza, he mastered the taiko, the shinobue, the no flute, and the shakuhachi under Katsuya Yokoyama. He performs and teaches internationally and has taught at international percussion workshops and festivals. He has performed as a soloist at Carnegie Hall, Suntory Hall, Osaka Festival Hall, Madison Square Garden, Tchaikovsky Hall, and International Performing Center in Moscow, among others. His music has been nominated 5 times for the, quote, Just Plain Folks Awards, end quote, in 2014 and in 2019 for Best Song and Best Album for Instrumental and Asian Music. He has recently released 2 CDs of his compositions with Taikoza Voice of the Earth and Tree Spirit. We are incredibly thrilled to have him today on Live and Local.
Without further ado, Marco Lienhard.
Oh
Marco, you're such a pro. That was outstanding. Thank you so much for being here today. It's so great to see you in person.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Glad to be here.
Could you tell us, please, what you just played for us?
So on the taiko, usually with taiko you have several people playing together, but for the last, from March till September, I've been playing on the roof. So that was sort of inspiration of some of the songs I was playing and trying to sort of bring the spirit up from the roof up in my neighborhood, up in around 15th Street, around Isham Park. And so it's inspired from a song called Beginnings that I composed a while ago. And it was based on sort of the joy that the gods would have when they discovered what they had created. And it was kind of a joyful piece. And then the longer flute is a piece that I composed also that is, it's called A Poem Up to the Bamboo. And it was originally played for a Japanese flute and a Chinese flute. And it was sort of a dialogue between two bamboo flutes from different cultures. And then the third one is kind of a inspired from two folk songs from Kyushu in Japan, so the southwest part of Japan, and sort of a lullaby from a prefecture called Kumamoto, and so that I sort of arranged it a little bit. That was on the shorter flute, the shakuhachi.
Okay, I was going to ask you
Yeah.
that right now. So could you recap once more what the names of the two flutes are, the lower and
So
higher?
actually they both have the same name.
Okay.
So they're shakuhachi.
Okay.
And the shorter one is actually the standard one that most people play.
Okay.
And the longer flute is about a foot longer. It's 2.7 feet. Shakuhachi means 1.8, 1 foot 8. That's what the word shakuhachi means in Japanese. But they're both called shakuhachi. They're just like what you call a bass shakuhachi.
Okay. Oh, well, first of all, just before I ask any questions, it's so amazing to have someone with such a deep commitment and mastery to a tradition like this. This is definitely a unique experience here on Live and Local. I had a few questions about technique, and this is coming from a place of just complete non-familiarity for the most part. But I wanted first to ask you about, one's a little specific, and I wanted to know about vibrato technique on the flutes. I noticed, some movement with your head, and I'm just wondering what that's about, and like the aesthetics, and maybe the actual production of it, and how you go about, and what maybe even more the aesthetic specifically, and the vibrato. And I'm comparing it to actually other wind. Sorry, I'm thinking right now of other wind instruments in the Western tradition and vibrato. So I was just wondering.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, most wind instruments around the world, people use the vibrato from the sternum, or usually sort of like changing the intensity of the air. And that can be used at times too, but what is unique to the shakuhachi is that though it has only 5 holes, you cover half of the openings to get all the different half tones. And also the vibrato is done by sort of shaking your head, sort of doing a little sort of nod, but really fast. And there's 8 triangular, or there's all different shapes, and you get all kinds of different vibratos. You can do a slow one, or ending with a faster ending, a little bit what you would do with your voice, I guess, a little bit. But you have to do that physically with your head to recreate that. So that is really one of the hard part of the instrument, and then so the half tones also are very difficult. And I think it is one of the most challenging instruments in Japan. And so not only because it has just 5 holes, but also the mouthpiece it's fairly large. So just imagine like a tube with a sharp sort of edge, and you have to sort of blow on the other side, and you have to cover with the lower lip, the part that's open in front of you, and blow on the other edge.
Yeah, because there's no reed.
There's no reed. There's a sharp edge, which makes it a little easier to play, but imagine just playing a huge bottle and trying to get a sound.
Wow. So is the also is I noticed that both of the songs happen to be in kind of minor modes, it sounded to me.
Yes.
One sounded a little bit more almost like a melodic minor, had sort of the first one almost had a leading tone sound to it, and the other one was more of like a natural minor. And I'm just wondering, is the construction of the flute have to do with the mode, or?
Actually, the flute is made in a major key.
Oh.
But as most Japanese things, like Zen Buddhists, you try to make it as hard as possible. And not giving you the instrument that would make it easier to just play it in minor keys. But it's a major instrument. So basically you have D, F, G, A, C. Those are the basic notes. And then from there, actually most of the traditional songs are all in minor. You have a few folk songs that use those 5 basic notes. There are a few folk songs that you'll find in Japan. But otherwise, most of the music is written to make it harder on yourself to play the instrument. Of course, nothing can come easy.
Interesting. Okay, and you said you wrote the...
Well, the first song I wrote, the other is sort of a theme that exists, and then I played around with it.
Okay.
So the songs that I tend to compose, I noticed that because I come back from, I originally from Switzerland, and I did piano, I did side-blown flute, silver flute, and I love sort of Bach, the Baroque. My father was an opera singer. But I sort of tend to, when I compose, end up to sort of kind of almost Baroque modes or...
that first one we're
Yes,
talking
yeah.
about. I thought I was wondering about that.
And the harmonies as well, when there's the 2 flutes playing together, it's...
And then the second one was it was an elaboration on a folk song, you're saying?
Correct, yes. It's a lullaby, and it's just... that is, it's the basic Japanese sort of tuning, and then sort of playing along with those.
Okay.
That's tuning.
And rhythmically, again, this is a very general impression. It sounded like a sequence of unmetered phrases. And I'm wondering, is there any rhythmic system involved here, or what's going on?
There is. The lullabies usually it's usually 2/4.
Okay.
And once in a while you have a 3/4 or 1/4 thrown in there.
But is it understood as that?
Yes. Usually people just clap, and then suddenly, the next phrase will be on the up.
Okay.
It'll be, and then they come back to
Okay. All right.
So it goes up and down. So it's really interesting. It's not always 2/4, but it tends to change. And then for the taiko, you'll go into 5/4, and then suddenly the 4/4. And
okay.
It's mostly phrases that are chanted or sung. So you teach them as a phrase, and then people learn it like that, and then they go to the drum and they sing dororon, dororon, dorokon, kodon.
So
So they don't think too much about the 2/4. I have to keep in the measure, in the tempo.
Okay.
But for the flute, you have some songs. If you play, for example, with a string instrument, you'll have a set rhythm with ritornando, when you sort of go a little slower, you go faster. And so it's really sort of feeling the other performer and playing together, knowing the song and flowing that way. For the shakuhachi, a lot of the music, for example, meditation music, doesn't have a count. So your breath is sort of the length of your phrasing.
Right.
And so knowing about the length of your breath, or how much notes you have to play, you sort of try to find out how much you can spend time on this phrasing and hold it, and have enough to sort of hold it till you pass out at the end. But you try to, it's really very physical. A flute doesn't seem to be physical, but you use the abdominals. It's almost like a pump. So it's really very important in that way. And that is a concept. Sort of, it took me a little while when I went to Japan when I was 17, 18, to sort of get into that mode and understand the phrasing and also different sort of tonalities. So basically, you just first copy your teacher, and you little by little assimilate, understand the phrasing, and as you play it over 100,000 times, you finally understand sort of how it's supposed to be played, and the song sort of teaches itself to you.
Right, so that's kind of what I was curious about when that tradition, that repertoire, traditional repertoire was taught to you. It wasn't presented to you with time signatures.
No.
That was my main.
Yes,
I
yeah.
didn't think so. I was just right. I see. One more thing. I think it was during the improvised one on the second piece, on the smaller shakuhachi. It reminded me of classical. Well, very very different in a lot of ways, but it kind of reminded me of classical Indian music in the way in which certain registers of the mode would be worked, like and with a raga, you might spend a little time on an upper register on like 3 notes of the scale and really work it and all the combinations, and then fall back down. And I was wondering if your improvisations are at all structured in any way like that in terms of?
Well, not consciously, no.
Okay.
I mean, I'm familiar with, to a certain point, Indian music, but it has, it's a different world. And
Yeah, of course.
you'd have to spend different lives,
Right.
like a cat, 7 lives for each culture. But I mean, it's just sort of playing around with, the basic melody, and then just, I've probably been influenced by, East and West, so I don't really analyze as much, because as I was brought in Europe, I mean, we were taught to analyze everything. And then once I went to Japan, then no questions were encouraged. So you don't ask anything, even if you ask, there's no usually answers. You have to figure it out on your own. So it just became more sort of learning from your teacher and trying to grasp as much as you could analyze and understand in a way. And it felt like if I understand it intellectually, it's not going to help anyway. So it's just, you just have to play it over and over and just feel it and memorize the song and sort of understand and through your body rather than mentally.
So I'm just going to follow up with that, is that you went to Japan at 17, 18, and you essentially unlearned what you had learned to learn this. So by essentially apprenticeship, by mimicking from those who could teach it, handing it down, so to speak. So without that assurance, which is only the repetition, what was the driving force that drove you to taiko and all this?
Well, I mean, the taiko I brought here today is sort of a lighter okedo. I mean, the drums that you can see,
Sure.
usually they are larger, so there's really that power. You even feel it more, like the vibration goes through you.
Yeah, like the shinobue too. Like
The shinobue as well, yes. But, I mean, for that, it's just that feeling, and as you play it or listen to it, it's just, I mean, it puts your body into sort of in a different state in a way. And for the flute also, what attracted me, I mean, I did play a little bit the silver flute. I heard the shakuhachi and I was just taken by it, and I just fell in love. It was an instant sort of love that really grabbed me, and I just wanted to go as far as I could in the study of it and learning about it, and try to go learn as much as I could during that time I was in Japan. I didn't really know how long I was going to be there. First, it was supposed to be 1 exchange year, and then I made contact with this taiko group that lived sort of as a commune, and so I joined them for a couple of months. I thought I'd just stay maybe 6 months, and that ended up being 18 years.
Amazing. So what was your original exposure to the flute that you must have been a teenager, I guess, and how did that come about?
Well, I started with the piano. I just like music melodies mostly, and then so the piano we had one at home. My father sang opera, and I was attracted by classic, the voices, but I just felt I wanted an instrument that I could go in the forest or travel and play, and the piano wasn't it. And so then I came across the flute. I loved the pan flute. It had that more natural, sort of breathy feel to it. I tried to go to South America to learn, and during that exchange year that didn't happen. But Japan was open, so I was able to go to Japan, and that's only when I discovered the shakuhachi. I didn't even know there were
Until you
that
got
type
there.
of flutes, bamboo flutes in Japan. And once I discovered it, I was like, wow,
Okay.
perfect. It just, I mean, to me, it went to a different level than the pan flutes or the kena. It was very different, but it had, again, that very natural voice and abilities. The flutes, everything was so controlled, like the purity and everything. And everything sort of, it was almost deconstructed, but it was almost what flute players are trying to do later in their life once they achieve very high technical sort of technique that they have, then they try to break everything. And then the shakuhachi from a long time ago, from centuries ago, that is what they've been doing, sort of breaking the sound, or just like making sort of imitation of the wind or the sounds of nature.
Yeah, there's a lot of ghost notes, right? And I'm sure that's almost like an ornamentation that I would hear now and then that I can only assume is part of the technique.
And then there's just like, slight double fingering that you barely hear, or just like this kind of just color of that note that changes from just giving you the note just as is.
Just by having your finger just a slightly different place on that open hole.
Right. That's why a lot of flute players have the flutes with the holes, so they can sort of control in a different way. So, yeah.
Well, I'm curious how the pandemic has helped you discover more about your craft and also share it with others. Obviously there's positives and negatives in running an arts organization during the pandemic. It's been horrible, right? It's been challenging.
It's been challenging, yes, indeed.
But if there's some silver linings, have you been able to, using technology, attract students internationally? Because what you do is very unique. It's very niche. It's very unique. It's not like I'm going to study the flute. It's not like I'm going to pick up the drums. It's a very specific style of performance.
Correct, yes. And so there are a very limited number of people who are interested in it all over the world. But I've been playing it now for 30, 40 years, so I sort of established my name fairly well enough that when I have a CD, there's some interest, and now, it has changed a little bit that people now download, or they have these free, like Spotify and things like that. So in a way, it's been a curse, and at the same time, it just allows you to be known to more people than you possibly could on your own. But I think since March, I've been trying. I was very acute to try to do something and try to share it with the students. I know, like, students or children were stuck at home, but we had to sort of bring them culture as the government was not going to do anything. And I thought it's our role to educate these kids or anybody. And so I started making, I think the Arts in Education organization were very hands-on right away. Within a week, they sort of got us together and we talked and tried to figure things out. And so I've been doing like these 3-minute videos that were shown in Baltimore, of all places, in TV, educational TV. They call it Artsplosion. So I set up, a little studio in my house. I bought the green curtains and different curtains, and then just set it up. I have a light like that, and so many different cameras, and the camera that follows you wherever you go. It just and microphones, and so I did also some courses online through Udemy, teaching the shakuhachi. The taiko I've been teaching online as well, and so people either play on their sofa or some have drums, and then so we listen to each other. You just have to get used because of the delay, so you just have to ignore whatever's coming to you.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I've done a lot of videos as well at home, and using the video that I had to make 40, different lengths for colleges. And the Westchester College, I think, I was supposed to do something in April, and they were very, very kind and open, and they said, let's do it as a Zoom. And it was like a month, less than a month. It was just total panic. Try to figure everything out, how it works. I would have my partner in another room with a laptop and say, "Can you hear me?" Because Zoom, for some kind, they're not very musician friendly.
It's not.
they turn off the sound, so you have to have a setting, and it doesn't explain. Back in March, nobody really explained how you're supposed to set it up.
Right.
And then so finally I figured out, when I played, it wouldn't just mute me. And so all these things, I mean, it was a challenging experience, but I think it was very rewarding in a way to be able to overcome all these difficulties and sort of pushing you to learn really quickly about all these, software editing and making video. So, and then also I did actually a recording. I released a CD that I had some already music that was made, and then some editor in Spain was interested. He saw my Kickstarter and said, I would love to edit it, master it for you. And so we did that. And I had a student in Brazil who did my cover, and so it was sort of a worldwide collaboration. So it was
there's some
really
happy
fun.
accidents through this.
There were, yes.
Yeah, that's nice. It's really nice.
I have one question about the taiko. I was wondering how much are the movements are purely ceremonial or functional from a visual perspective, or theatrical, and what is a sound producing movement? It seemed like there must be a combination somewhat.
So the highs are fairly thick, and so it takes somewhat some strength to get the drum really to sound well.
Mm-hmm.
And so of course you need sort of a little more distance to be able to play. And
okay.
Each festival in Japan usually was linked to a Shinto temple and a festival, but the way the drums were played was very different from temple to temple. So it changes, and there's, I think, a great link with the folk traditions that exist there, with the dances or the movement that are done in the fields, or like fishermen, you will see kind of more of that type of movement, or like chopping wood. And so those are stylized movements, of course. And each festival usually has one or two rhythm, usually not too difficult, I mean, so that everybody in the town can learn it within a month or two. And it's a tradition that's passed on. But then every person who plays it wants to outdo the other. So through the centuries, movements, I think, have gotten a little fancier, and they want to outdo each other.
Okay.
And so to that level, it doesn't always have, a real meaning to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's more sometimes a little flourish.
Got it. Interesting.
But sort of one thing about, the 1 year here spending mostly at home and during the pandemic, but I experienced sort of as a microcosm, I organized a run around the United States from 1990 to 93, and I ran about 10,000 miles with a group of 13, and we performed along the way. We went from New York to Florida to New Orleans, San Diego, all the way Seattle, Chicago, and New York, and that took us 3 years, running 30 to 40 miles a day, and sort of, having that as a background, it gives you sort of a little willpower, or you think you can overcome anything, or something will come of it. So always kind of stay on the positive and be able to get through it.
Well, I think we're all getting through it, and music is a positive language. And I think, like you said before, if it reverberates inside of you, that's something to hold on to and share that with someone else, like you did today.
Yeah.
We're very grateful for that. So thank you again for being here today.
Thank you very much.
You bet. So Marco, where could our listeners go to follow you and keep track of all that you do?
So my name is a little complicated, but it's Marco Lienhard in one word.com, or Taikoza, so TAIKOZA.com, and you can find all the music. And so you can also find those links on my website to Spotify. So Spotify somehow is a little weird because they can't put the same person together under different names. So there's under Taikoza, East Winds Ensemble, or Marco Lienhard, and they're all separately listed. And we'll be doing a concert in the park, in Isham Park, on June 6th, if the weather's okay. And if it rains, the 13th, and also East Winds Ensemble will do at Bruce's Garden, which is close to Isham Park, on June 12th. So those are concerts we are setting up to do finally live with distancing and sprays and.
Well, you know what? Anything is positive. I mean,
Yes,
and God bless you for trying to make it happen, because I sincerely hope that by June, people
It'll
will
be
be willing
easier.
to be easy to go back out and gather in whichever small groups we can.
Well, at least the drum is loud enough that people can hear it from far, and they can even stay in the building across,
That's right.
the garden, and open the window, and they'll hear a little bit of the tunes.
Marco, my 2.5-year-old son is, I'm sure, gonna love it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Marco, thanks again for joining us today on this live and local episode of Inwood
Thank you
Networks
very
On
much.
Air. You bet.
Thanks for having me.
It's where we meet the musicians, writers, theater makers, artists of all kinds who make their home here in Upper Manhattan. If you have a moment, please show us some love right now by rating and reviewing this podcast on Apple Podcasts. It really helps. Thank you so much to 809 Restaurant and Lounge for hosting us and not kicking us out with the drums. It's pretty amazing. Like, no one came off the street and thought we were beating anybody. It's pretty amazing. But we are on Dykeman Street, so essentially anything goes most of the time down here. You hear sirens, you hear anything. But thanks to HeightSites.com for local uptown promotional support. Be sure to follow us on Inwood Artworks to keep up with all that we do in our social media channels. We do the Inwood Film Festival, Filmworks Al Fresco, pop-up art galleries, live performances, and so much more. You can support On Air and all of our programming by making a tax-free donation at inwoodartworks.nyc/donate. This program is supported in part by public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, in partnership with the City Council, and in part by a grant from the NYC and Company Foundation, with partial support from Manhattan Borough President Gale Brewer. From the top of Manhattan and the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much for tuning in. This is Aaron Sims
I'm Jonathan Bell.
for Inwood Artworks On Air.